Welcome to the Power Forward Pod, hosted by the Power Forward Group Financial Advisor Team, where we believe two is better than one, dialogues are better than monologues, thoughts are meant to be challenged, sound boxes are the enemy, and change is the only constant. I'm Ruvin Levavi, joined today by PFG advisor Joe Shalom. Joe and I had the great pleasure of presenting a seminar at a community organization last night. We got some good feedback, great questions during it, and we thought it'd be an important thing to encapsulate on our pod. So we're going to try to do it off the cuff, without the slides, not on Zoom, live on the airwaves. So, Joe, what was it called?
Yep. We did a Financial Planning 101. The goal was really to learn how to set up a financial plan based off of your goals, right? As you're getting started, where do you want to save to? What do you want to do? How do you plan for the future? Not knowing what that's going to look like in the next 20, 30, 40 years as you're building out. Yeah,
and our focus today is really financial planning for young professionals as you begin your career, thinking about where to start, how to start investing, how to think about a goal-oriented approach. As always, our team is here to help. If you have any questions on any topics we bring up today or anything kind of jogs, hit us up via email, reach out, or post in the comments. So when we think about investing, we think about starting off in our market-based portfolio. The number one rule as we sit here to build out a seminar on Financial Planning 101 is to start off understanding that we have to know what we don't know. That's the golden rule. Acknowledge what we don't know. What don't we know, Joe?
Yeah, we don't know what the market's going to do.
No crystal balls.
No. If you do know what the market's going to do, please call us because we could definitely use your help.
That's right. We'll hire you tomorrow. If you pick stocks guaranteed, let's go with an 8-ball approach.
Yeah. So to that extent, right? If you looked at back from 2010 to 2018, what do you think the top companies were? What comes to mind is the FANG companies, right? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. What if I told you there's a company that did better than them?
Well, I think it couldn't have been NVIDIA yet because NVIDIA is more recent. AI has been the tailwind.
Past year, probably.
Right.
Past 2 years.
I'm just going to guess. Energy drinks like Red Bull, Monster. I heard a lot about Monster.
Good guess. That's I've definitely seen that in the news before. What if I told you Domino's?
Wait, Domino's Pizza?
Yep, Domino's Pizza.
Okay, so what was Domino's up over that time period?
Yep, between 2010 2018, they're up over 2,500%. Compared to those FANG companies, maybe 5, 6, 7, 800, depending on the company.
So outperformed by 2,000% of all those companies we've heard of.
More than double.
Not that we haven't heard of Domino's, because we've all heard Domino's.
Yeah. I see their cars driving around all the time.
Right. Actually, when I think of Domino's and I think about, they were kind of, if I remember, they had these commercials about it. They were reinventing their pizza and making their services better. There's a time period where I think Domino's drivers were getting into car accidents as they're trying to deliver pizza within the time frame. Papa John's, right? Papa John's didn't do so well.
Yeah, and I'm shocked that company's the highest growing company. Okay,
so Domino's is the winner. No, I don't think I would have picked it. Most people wouldn't have picked it. Let's get some pizza, but let's talk about what the market does and what we do know. So what we do know about the market is what it does over time in general, the stock market in general. When we think about, for today's discussion, when we think about the stock market, we're going to refer to it as the S&P 500, which is an index that really tracks the broader components of the stock market. So from 1997 to 2016, over that 20-year period, the S&P 500 returned 7.7%. How do I know that? Because I'm looking at a slide from J.P. Morgan. I definitely would not know 7.7. Historically speaking, that's generally what you hear. The stock market over every 20, 30-year rolling year period returns right around 7%. Dividends reinvested, which is the way most of us invest, it gets a little closer to 10%. So that's what the market in general did. The question that we ask ourselves, and J.P. Morgan on their beautiful slide gives us the answer, is if the market did that, how did the average real person, subjective trader, do over that time period? They do better or worse than 7 to 10%? Joe?
They do worse. They do closer to 2.5%.
Wait, so you're telling me that, inflation is supposed to be 2% and the average trader is doing inflationary rates?
Yep, because they didn't pick Domino's, that's for sure.
Well, I definitely went on no Domino's, but they're basically sitting on a treadmill going nowhere. So J.P. Morgan gives us a slide. What are they telling us? They're saying, hey,
work with them.
Work with J.P. Morgan.
Oh, we're telling you to work with us, right?
Well, maybe. But the question is why, right? It's not necessarily because, J.P. Morgan picked stocks or Joe and Ruvin picked stocks better than somebody else. We didn't know about Domino's. Maybe they knew about Domino's, probably not. If they knew about Domino's, I think they would have done better than 7.7%. So when we look into the study that backs up that slide, what was really going on is we all learn from our grandparents. We'll always use my grandparents this one. Grandpa says, buy low, sell high. Does the average trader buy low, sell high?
Nope. They do the exact opposite. They let emotion get in the way.
Right. So
when do you want to invest? When things are doing good, right? You're feeling good. Market's going up. Your friends are all talking about it. That's when you want to start investing. You want to be putting more money in. But in reality, when do you want to be thinking about it? When the market's down. right? When COVID happened, market dropped 20, 30, 40%. You don't want to be selling then. You want to stick that out. You want to be investing then.
Right. Inevitably, I think in our own practice, we get asked the wildest and craziest questions about investments. All the crypto questions come up. All the crazy stocks come up when the market's through the roof. It's kind of like people aren't necessarily happy with those returns. It's like they want more, right? But when the market's dropping the floor, they're definitely not happy, so they're just staying out. They're not, forget about sticking with the S&P 500. They're running for the fences. Remember that guy with the Russian ruble?
Yeah. We had a client one time ask us, I want to buy when the market's down. I think this was about 2 years or so ago. Market was down, almost 20%, I think in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And he said, we told him he should start putting more money, and he had a lot of money on the sidelines. He said, I want to wait for the bottom. So we said, do you know when the bottom is? He said, no. He asked us. And it happened to be
I could find the bottom somewhere.
Happened to be a week after Russia invaded Ukraine. And what'd you say, Ruvin? What'd you tell him?
I said, you want the bottom of something, you can buy the Russian ruble right now. I have no idea how to buy the Russian ruble. I couldn't have bought the Russian ruble.
But you were right.
I was right. The Russian ruble went up a lot since that point. So there's a bottom somewhere, but I think it's really...
How do you find the bottom?
How do you find the bottom?
Or what are you supposed to do?
We don't necessarily find the bottom. You don't know where the bottom is, so we got to maintain that consistency. But we really focus on ourselves and consistency first. How do we focus on ourselves? We focus on our own emotions.
Yeah, making sure we don't let that affect us in the market, right? How do we do that? By thinking about how much cash do we need on the sidelines, that if something happens in the market, it doesn't matter, right? The financial advisor textbook says to have, an emergency fund, right? 3 to 6 months of expenses in the bank is the technical term they usually say, right? This way, market drops and big expense pops up, you lose your job, something happens, you're covered, right? If you have to sell when the market's down because of an unforeseen expense or something pops up, that's going to hurt your whole plan. So if we can make sure you have enough cash on the sidelines, you'll be okay. Right? That number is different for everyone, obviously, but as long as you're comfortable, then you don't have to worry what the market's doing. And if you could take emotion out of it and not worry, you can keep it going. How do we keep it going? How do we take emotion out of it?
Well, the way I think about it in my own life is what does that really mean, right? Market drop in 2008, 2009, I remember dropping a ton. For me, it means when I put my ATM card in the machine, I need to see a number where I don't care if the market drops that much. So yeah, the financial advisor's textbook, recommends 3 to 6 months of expenses. For me, it's more of an emotional number. That means it's got to be a round number. So if my 3 months of expenses were, I don't know, I'm going to make up a number because I should know my own expenses, but it's a tough one.
I think anyone knows their expenses.
Yeah, but it was like 42,500, on a 3 month. If that was my 3 months of expenses, I wouldn't have emotional tie to that number. So for me, I make it either 40 or 50. Also, I don't like math, so it's got to be a round number that I can understand better. But it's got to make me feel okay knowing that every couple of years the market will have that drop. Otherwise, I got to meditate. You meditate?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Working on my breathing
I
exercises.
also don't go to the ATM anymore. I think everything's online banking nowadays.
I am clearly older than Joe, right? Apple Pay, though, quicker way to pay. So we want to maintain that consistency of emotion, make sure we're not trying to time the market.
So when do we invest? If we're not timing the market, what are we supposed to do?
So there's this Wall Street term called dollar cost averaging. What that means is you want to average your way in the market. You want to take the same dollar amount on every month or every daily basis or every annual basis and make sure you're cycling it through the market. That way you're not trying to time it on a daily period. From 2001 to 2020, that's 20 years, by the way. 2001, 2020, I think it's 20 years. There were 5,000 trading days in the market. I cannot do that math either, but I've been given to it by a nice slide that backs it up. Over that period, the market did 7.46%. Right? Dividends reinvested, right around 10. Very close to the numbers we just discussed before. Slightly different period, but again, market's pretty consistent if you give it time. If you missed the 10 best days of the market over that 5,000-year period, Joe, what was the rate of return?
3.5%, 3.3%.
If you missed the best 30 days of the market, you're net negative. You're down over 1.5%, 2%.
Wow.
Right? You missed 40 best days?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Wild, right?
Yeah. Do you know when the best days are?
No, that's the problem, right? That's why we need that guy who can... We're still waiting for you to call the 1-800 number and sign up, the guy with the 8 ball who can tell us which stocks to buy, Domino's, and where the 10 days in the market are. But we don't know it, right? We don't have Nostradamus. What's that guy's
Astrology?
name? Nostradamus? I don't know, the guy who predicts the world is ending every couple of years. We don't have any of those people on our team, and I don't think anybody does. So we want that consistency of our investments to maintain, rather than a betting portfolio, betting on individual stocks and hoping to get lucky, an investment portfolio that's dollar cost average consistently in the market over the entire trading period that we're betting on, but growing on, not betting, right? Investing to get that 7 to 10% that the market gets. And what does that really mean? Again, for some people who don't like math, if you're making 7% on your money, you're doubling your money every 10 years. That's a number I can work with, right?
Yeah.
Not 2,005%, 2,500%.
Yeah.
But we're not all going to get lucky and pick dominoes every day of the week. So how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, the biggest problem with that is you don't know what your life's going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, right? So you're getting started. Sure, you're thinking about, starting a family, buying your first house. But how do you plan for all these things at the exact same time, right? Obviously, retirement, maxing your 401k, not maxing your 401k, what should you do? How do you decide where your money should be going, right? So we try and think about it in different areas, right? First area is just, short-term expenses. You say, hey, I want to buy a house in the next 2-3 years, or, I got to get married and planning a wedding in a year or two. Anything that's coming up in the next, let's call it 3 to 5 years. You want to make sure that money's relatively safe because you don't want to lose that money, right? If you're looking at buying a house in the next 12 to 24 months, you can have that money being in the market, taking super risk. You want to be a little bit more on the conservative side so you have access to that money, right?
So safety of principles. What tools are we using for safety of principle?
Yeah, so there we want to have, high yield savings accounts right now. They're probably paying, 4.5% or 5% or so. Just keep
right now, by the way, this is on, September 24. It could change.
Yep, good point. But yeah, that's really just keeping up in line with inflation, making sure your money's safe. We want maybe some CDs if you're planning the money using a year, 6 months, 12, 18 months, just to lock it up for a little bit of time, a little bit higher return there. I-bonds, also inflation protection bonds, anything that's sort of conservative, safe. This way you're not going to lose that money. Then we think about, let's talk about on the far side of things, retirement, right? That's money you can't touch anyways really till you're 60, but you need to make sure you're planning for that time because at the end of the day, if you're not saving now, you're not gonna get there, right? So, what tools do we look at? Look
at your 401ks, Roth and traditional IRAs. The government incentivizes us to save for retirement, so they give you certain tax benefits on those tools, right? The government incentivizes us to pay for retirement because they probably don't want to pay for our retirement, right? Social Security is having its issues. Government wants to make sure we can control our own retirements. So how does that work? Your regular traditional 401k, your regular IRA, it's a pre-tax dollar that goes in, so they take it off the top. It compounds tax-free. When you take it out, you can't take it out to 60. There's certain limitations on it. When you take it out, what happens?
You got to pay taxes.
Right, because you can defer taxes, but you can't avoid taxes. So you got to pay taxes, but it does incentivize us to get nicer growth because of the tax advantages on those accounts. Some people want to pay the taxes but want the benefit of the compound interest. What do they use? What tools do they use for retirement?
They use a Roth, right? Either a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, right? So they'll pay the taxes up front. That money also grows compounding. You don't have to pay any taxes. And when you pull it out, you also don't have to pay any taxes then.
Right. Can you mix and match?
Yeah. Usually you could put some into the 401k. I think the maximum this year is $23,000, right? Most companies usually allow you to do both, a little bit of either. You could do a little bit into a traditional IRA, a little bit into a Roth IRA, depending on your income. So you have both options.
You can mix and match up to the limitations, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah. So it depends which is right for you, and it depends on your view of taxes going forward and your need for tax benefits now. I was at a conference the other day. A gentleman named Ed Slott, quoted in the Wall Street Journal all the time. He's been a financial advisor for years. He's considered the expert on retirement accounts. He's of the mindset of paying your taxes now, so then you'd use a Roth version of these things. He calls traditional IRAs are IOUs to the IRS. That's his funny joke. IRAs, IOUs to the IRS. And then he says, boom.
It's true.
And drops the mic. But
yeah, well, that's right. That's sort of what your life looks like now and what life looks like in the future.
Right.
But most people don't know what happens in the middle, right?
That's what everybody tends, not everybody, but a lot of people forget about the middle, the fun years.
Yeah, and that's the most important years that you want to save for, right? Because you don't want to have your money that's going to work for you in 10 or 15 years from now sitting in cash because that money's not growing, right? That's just keeping up with inflation. And you don't have to have it locked up in a retirement account because you can't use it in 15 years from now, if that's, when you're 40 years old, right? You can only access it when you're 60. So what do you do there, right? We want that money growing in the market. We want that money working for you, but accessible. So what do we use there? What kind of accounts do we use, Ruvin?
We use regular brokerage accounts. You get the benefit on the tax side if you stay in it to win it. For every year, you can get long-term capital gains. It's a little more beneficial than ordinary income. But basically, you get the upside over time of the stock market, which does what, Joe?
7 to 10%.
Right? Given time, right? Averaging over every 20, 30 years, yep. Right? If you have a diversified portfolio. And you get the benefit of not having to wait till 60 to touch your money. You can get it out, use it. So it's beneficial for now, but it's growing for later. And when you think about all these, you want them to work in conjunction, right? A lot of the mistakes we see are individuals, not intentionally necessarily, but getting overweight in one box or the other, right?
Yeah.
See it in the focus box a lot. How do people get overweight in the focus box?
Yeah, you forget to do things. You sit on cash and you say, I'm not sure what our life's going to look like in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years, and you don't do anything. And And then you wake up and say, hey, I'm sitting on a couple $100,000 of cash.
Which is problematic from two reasons, right? It's problematic. We'll come back to the second reason, but first reason it's problematic is if your money's in cash and you're not earning above and beyond the bank interest rates, sometimes you're earning below the bank interest rates, you have leakage in that bucket, right? If inflation is 2%, you want to be earning at least 2% on your money. If inflation is 4%, you need to earn at least 4% of your money. Anything less than that's leakage. You're not having growth. You're just keeping up with the Joneses. That's why in the flexibility and future box, you want to generate more of a rate of return because you have to grow that money. You have to compound that money. You have to grow over time to get there.
Same thing in the retirement accounts, right? If all your money is locked up in a retirement account and you want to buy a house, you got to wait till 60. And you don't necessarily want to do that, right? So you want to have a little bit in every area to be balanced.
Right. So you want those balanced buckets. You don't want to be overweight like a seesaw on one side, the other side. And especially when we're thinking about the younger side of things, it's when do I kind of foray out of the focus box? I might be incentivized by work to be in the, automating to some level to the retirement side of things. When do I jump into the brokerage side of things?
Yeah. It's all about starting early, right? And I'll give you two options, right? Let's say you had the option, Ruvin, number one, you're just starting out now. You can't save a lot because you're not making a lot. You just came out of college. You could save $1,000 a month. But you know what? You're going to save $1,000 a month for the next 40 years.
That sounds a lot to me. It's coming out of college, but okay.
Well, inflation nowadays, right?
Sounds good.
So over the course of 40 years, you'll save $480,000. Or you could say, you know what? I'm not making enough now. I'm just going to sit on the cash, but I'm going to start investing in 20 years from now. But because I'm older,
I want to wait till I got a lot of money to invest. Let's go.
Exactly. So you're going to save $2,000 a month in 20 years from now.
So double the amount. I'm going to wait 20 years, but I'm going to save double the amount per month.
Yep.
Over how many years?
Over 20 years. So you save the same $480,000.
Wait, how come I only got 20 years and the first time I had 40 years?
You started earlier. You started later in life.
Because I'm old. Okay, fine.
Right. So over that time, you save $480,000. $1,000 over 40 years, or $1,000 or $2,000 a month for 20 years, starting in year 20. Right. Assuming just the market, right? We said the market is 7%. Assuming a 7% rate of return, who do you think would have more money? The person who started $1,000 a month or waited 20 years into $2,000 a month?
Sounds like you're setting me up for a trick question, so I'm going to let you answer the question.
Yeah. It's all about starting early, right? If you started at $1,000 a month, you'd have more than double with the person waiting 20 years, right? You'd have almost $2.4 million compared to slightly less than $1 million, right? $1.4 million difference.
All right, sounds like a real number to me. How low can you go? Is there a certain dollar amount that you need to start investing in the stock market these days?
Nope. It's like limbo. You can go as low to the ground, right? You want to start at $50 a month. That $100 a month, as long as you get started.
Right. So the beauty of some of the tools that we have in the investment space today is, trading has become commission free. We're able to use ETFs instead of buying the actual individual stock. You can buy what's an ETF?
Exchange traded funds, basically buy micro shares of companies.
Well, it's an index. It's synthetic of an index that tracks whatever. It's synthetic of an index and tracks that index, but it's similar, right? You're getting that broad diversification rather than buying one individual stock, which can be hard, right? Because if you're only putting, $1,000 or $50 a month in the stock market, how much is NVIDIA trading out these days?
I don't know.
All right. Well, you're not going to even get one share of NVIDIA. So, and then if you try to just buy one share of NVIDIA, you're betting on NVIDIA, which might have been an okay bet. Might not be a good bet going in the future. Domino's, though, winner, right? So start early. There's no dollar amount. You want to make sure you're being consistent throughout because Joe did the math for us, trick question, but you start early. You're in it to win it. Think about kind of the current format of saving. We think about what we're doing, but to me, money's a holy object, right? It's holy in the sense that we can have fun with it. We buy cars, yachts, not yet, take some time, right? Pools, no, that's not why it's holy. Money allows you to, right? Money's a tool. It's a tool to buy all those things, but it's also a tool to leave a legacy. I began my career on the estate planning side of things, and I like to think about where am I going, right? You can't get there unless you think about where you're going, taking that time to think about where I'm going. So how do I think about where I'm going? You think about your own money story. Think about those that came before me, what they did, and how they crafted the psychology that I have around money. And I think when you start your entire financial journey there, you're able to be a lot more intentional around it, right? I'll share my own, but each of us, take a minute, think about your own money story. My grandparents, but my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. He lost his entire family during the Holocaust. He survived 2 concentration camps, 3 death marches. He met my grandmother after the war, and they were lucky enough to move to escape Europe, move to America. And what do you think the first thing he wanted to do was? What did he lose?
Family.
He lost his family, right? He wanted to rebuild and restart. And the first way to do that was to make sure he can support my grandmother, he had to learn the language. He couldn't speak a word of English and had no money and had nothing to support him. So he learned the language, got a job, saved and saved and saved, and they grew a family. And we have all these negative things to say about our politicians, our country at the time, but I think America's a great place, right? A land of opportunity. I saw it. My grandparents, he saved and he worked really hard. But what did he save for? What was the most important thing for him? It started off with not having family. As he grew out, he wanted to have his family around him, and he did. He had 3 kids. As your kids are growing up, I have 3 kids. They're around me all the time. But as we get older, you get married, the kids start to separate, and that's what began to happen in my family. Not in a negative way, just each kid got married. They made a home where they made a home. But every year we celebrate Passover, and my grandmother would make this beautiful Passover Seder, and everybody would come to my grandparents' house. I remember this as a child. We'd all sit around, have political arguments, kind of like Thanksgiving on steroids. More food. Jewish holidays, just a lot of food. But every year, my grandmother would make this meal, the whole family would be together, and it was a really warm moment as a kid. And we'd think about not just our family story, but our cultural story, and that brought us together. And he'd sit there, the head of the table, just smiling, looking back and forth. The guy was living in it. This was his moment. This is what he worked so hard for. As they advanced in years, it got harder and harder for my grandmother to cook that massive meal. And without the food, we ain't coming. So things change up a little bit. And as she couldn't handle making the meal anymore, what do you think happened? It started to revert back. One kid went to that in-laws, the other kid went to in-laws. Family split up naturally, right? You go to other people's families. My grandfather's a smart guy. He was a survivor, right? He had a hack. What was his hack? Worked hard throughout my career. I got this retirement fund I saved up. I'm going to use that retirement fund. We lived in New York. We live in New York. It's kind of dreary out today. He said, hey, I'm going to spend on the family to go to Florida, to Miami Beach, sit on that beach, have a catered Passover at a hotel every single year. And what do you think people did?
They went.
They went, right? We went.
I would have joined the family if you paid me.
It was amazing, right? Expense paid. We're showing up. It was certainly expensive, but that's what he saved for. He didn't save to just keep pushing it down the road. He saved to bring us together and have that experience. When he passed away, we set up his trust to continue to leave that legacy, to continue to do that. And his money literally has a legacy. It has a through line. And when I think about my kids and what we want money to do, it's the same idea. Why am I harping on that now? Because as you begin your career, it's kind of where you're going, right? You want to save for something. It's much easier to save for something if you see the end game rather than just start with, all right, how am I going to double that money? I got to buy that domino stock tomorrow. I got to buy that crypto tomorrow because I got to buy that Lamborghini, Porsche, Jaguar. I don't like cars. You like cars? What do you like?
Not a big car guy either. I like watches.
Yeah. So you got to ask yourself, what's your money story? I mean, for Joe, it was different, right? Joe, your family has been here a little longer than my family.
Yeah. My story was actually where I started my career was my grandpa started a business over 65 years ago, right? Children's clothing. I started working there. I grew up also around the holidays. My dad was the youngest. I was on the younger side of all the grandkids. And I was listening to everyone talk about, the business. And I was saying, hey, when I grow up, I want to be there. That's what I wanted to do. And I did start there thinking, all right, this is exactly what I'm going to do. This is where I want to be. And as I, got older, realized that it's not necessarily about working there. It's about starting my own journey and building for myself to plan for my family the same way my grandpa did, right? And it was all about having everyone sit together and be able to talk about the same thing, even though everyone was in different businesses in different areas, but to be able to be together. And that was the idea, right? And we also went on Passover trips for the same thing. And that's why I'm so close with my cousins, because we're able to spend so much time together.
Right. So everybody's got a distinct view of what money can do for them. But what we urge you today to do as you build out your financial journey is you start with the beginning, that focus bucket, that flexibility bucket, that future bucket is really think about not just the future bucket in terms of retirement, but what do you want that to look like? What is your view? What is the prism? What do you want to change within your money story? What do you want to achieve within your money story? And then become the CEO of your financial life, right? That takes some intentionality. Sometimes that takes working with an advisor. Some of us, can do it ourselves. But don't just chase the market. Don't bet on stocks, right? Invest. Think about your portfolio as an investment portfolio rather than betting portfolio. And how else do we do it?
Start early.
Start early, baby. So hit us with any questions. Love to be here for you. Please, the reason I do what I do is because I love when people share their money stories. I learn from all of you and all of the experiences that our clients have. It enriches my life, and I hope we can enrich yours.